Ladies and gents, welcome back. Now, mandates have been lifted across all the province, whether it's mask mandates or vaccine passport mandates. We're seeing them being lifted every which way. Now, we're still continuing to see protests happening all over the place. Here's one that happens every Saturday in Calgary. Now, why would that be? Well, Trudeau thinks that freedom is fine for the rest of the world, but not for Canadians. The federal government is holding fast to virtually every restriction it has imposed during the pandemic. We have here everybody except Ottawa is declaring an end to the COVID-19 pandemic. With BC's announcement last week, it would be phasing out mask and vaccine mandates. All 10 provinces have now set an effective end date to their treatment of COVID-19 as a public health emergency by April 27th, the date when Ontario's pandemic restrictions become the last to expire. Mask, vaccine, and physical distancing mandates will effectively cease to exist in Canadian daily life, except according to Ottawa. Even as each week yields the end of another provincial COVID mandate, the federal government is continuing to hold fast to virtually every restriction it has imposed over the course of the now 2-year pandemic. Now, this is why we're seeing large protests gathering still across Canada. Now, we're getting the usual, and these are big. That's not a few people. This is in Calgary, and this is happening every Saturday as people are organizing. And of course, we have the usual media types downplaying what's happening, but it's an unusual one because they're trying to downplay, but at the same time show how destructive these things are. So we have global news: protesters clash over weekly rallies against health measures in downtown Calgary.
We want our Saturdays back.
Frustration mounting among some who live in the Beltline neighborhood over weekly protests against COVID-19 health measures. So much so, people in the neighborhood are coming together to counter the protest.
Well, ultimately, we don't want this convoy going down 17th Ave every Saturday. That's what we want to happen. And so far, the police haven't been able to do that for us, so we're trying to do it ourselves.
And grievances reaching a boiling point, with protesters clashing at an intersection on 17th Avenue. The weekly Calgary Freedom Rally, which begins in Central Memorial Park, typically draws the crowds voicing their opposition to COVID-19 health measures. Calgary police estimate just over 1,100 protesters came together for the rally on Saturday. Police confirm only one person was arrested after a shoving match with a counter-protester. But with Alberta axing the majority of its health measures last week, residents are wondering why the protests continue. In a statement to Global News, a rally spokesperson says the protest continues for several reasons, including a lack of trust the UCP government will bring back health measures, as well as federal travel mandates for unvaccinated Canadians. The Freedom Rally organizers say they want Premier Kenney to resign, as well as an investigation into Alberta Health Services' COVID-19 response and constitutional reform. Beltline residents say they just want the rallies to end.
A lot of people are getting really sick and tired of the constant noise and the harassment.
In response to those complaints, the weekly protests will be discussed in a closed-door meeting between Calgary City Council and police on Tuesday to get an idea on what action can be taken.
This is about starting an open relationship with all of the different branches that are involved in this.
Politician being usual politician. So yeah, the protests they're continuing, and we're seeing counter protests coming in. We don't see much clash or anything very destructive going on until counter protesters come in. So it's a interesting dynamic going on. But people are visibly frustrated with the federal government not taking a stand not taking a stand with the provinces when it comes to lifting these measures that seem to be useless in the face of the world getting over this pandemic and the world moving on from this. As we know, there's a new boogeyman in town, and the media has a war to sell. So most everyday Canadians and most everyday citizens around the world are moving on from this pandemic, and we're seeing that reflected all over the place. But we do have clashes that are happening, and what's not being seen in the media is a lot of things not being told when you see this footage is that these are the counter protesters. These are the pro lockdown people saying that they want saying govern me harder, daddy. We want more mandates and lockdowns in an endemic stage of a pandemic that's been already going on for far too long. So I just wanted to fill you in that there is more happening out there when it comes to these protests against federal lockdowns. We know that airline staff have been let go and their unions have not been standing up for their rights as employees on the federal level and for federal restrictions. So you're going to continue to see protests until these restrictions are lifted. For the people that are frustrated with these protests, I'd say maybe get together with them and have these federal lockdowns taken out, and we'll see less protests in the future. Anyhow, that's all I've got for you on this story. Stay tuned for more stories. We'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.